The three races are something that's new. We have added that experience race, Chipper, which you brought up, which is to get more new folks into the sport who, if you think, oh, geez, this is way too hardcore for me, that experience is really meant to just give you a taste of that environment and the experience. And then, of course, the sprint, you're starting to get a little bit perky, and then the World Series is just, it's a beast. It's a thing.
Yeah,
So a little
Sure
something for
is.
everyone.
welcome to the Low Tide Boys, a Swimrun podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 270 of the show. We got a great one for everyone this week. We are doing a deep dive course preview, updated course preview for Ötillö Catalina, a race that we're super stoked on. And joining us right off the bat is race director Lars Finanger. Welcome back to the show, Lars.
Well, always a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having us. And here we go. Let's deep dive into Catalina, baby.
Let's do it. But before we get there, Lars, this is something that we usually save to the end where we share a bunch of love and gratitude for everything, your support of us. I'm flipping it. I'm doing it now because in doing my research, Chipper will co-sign with everything I'm about to say. I certainly know I can speak for him on this one. Doing the research for this episode, looking at the course, I couldn't help but put ourselves back in 2020. We had just started the show. You were super supportive of us from the beginning and just really encouraged us to keep going. So, now you've been on the show. I don't know how many times you've guest hosted the show, but I just want to just send a major gratitude for all the support you've given of us over the years. And it's kind of amazing that, after many fits and starts with this race coming back, it's finally coming back
It's
5 years
happening.
later.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, you guys are now 270 shows in. I still remember I was at a different house at that time. I remember John Stevens and I were training up for Catalina ourselves. We rented a tall ship to sail out to Catalina from Long Beach that year, commemorated by this cool shirt for those watching on YouTube that I'm wearing.
Yep.
We had 24 of us. I can tell you right now that just people are so passionate about Swimrun. I know not only John and I were listening to every episode that you were doing in that lead up to Catalina, but so many of the Europeans who were coming over. Anything about Swimrun, people are just wanting to devour. And I would say you guys are extremely polished and professional in your pod now while still having fun.
Wow.
I think you guys were learning as you were going in those early
Oh,
episodes.
Yeah.
100%. It's actually a little embarrassing. A little embarrassing when we go back and listen to some of those.
The intention was always there. The passion was always there. And the curiosity was always there. I haven't been back to listen, but I'm just going down memory lane again. But it's just so cool that you guys decided this is how we need to scratch our itch, is by doing a podcast to do this. And man, 2020, so long ago.
A long time ago, and that's what kind of sparked all this. Catalina was really the catalyst for us starting the show. And, I should say, we think we're getting a lot of like earlobes and eyeballs this episode. So if you're new to Swimrun, Lars, why don't you just describe the sport, describe Ötillö for folks who might be tuning into this being like, I'm doing this race, I want to get prepared. So why don't we just like set the stage on like, what is Ötillö, what is Swimrun, and what are people signing up for?
Yeah, so Ötillö, or however we want to say it, Chris and Chipper pronounce it correctly. I'm still on the American Ötillö way. It's the genesis was a team sport where together you swim and run initially in Sweden between islands. You start the race together, you finish the race together, you do the entire race together, and you basically move through nature, whatever that means. The courses have evolved over time from island to island. In the case of Catalina, although we're on an island, it's going to be cove to cove. In the case of some of our other races, it is truly island to island. And some races are in rivers, some are in lakes, some are in the Pacific Ocean, so some are in the Atlantic Ocean. So it's we've really grown as a sport as well. Even though sometimes it seems like just baby steps, those baby steps are certainly turning into so much more, it seems.
Yeah. And we find it's really provides a great sense of adventure and a nice break from the routine of whatever you might be doing from an endurance perspective. That could be triathlons, you can be an open water swimmer, you could be a trail runner. It just pairs you up with someone else and you go out and you just have a great time out there and you make your way from A to B or whatever the course is. No one's too concerned about how fast you swim or how fast you run. It's really about completing the journey together and sort of the sense of adventure. And that's really what got Chris and I hooked on this, well before 270 episodes ago. But, Lars was the original race director here in the United States, brought this sport over from Sweden. So, one of the OGs, I guess you could say for sure. But yeah, Catalina will be a great time. There's 3 different distances. So you have the experience, the sprint, and then the World Series distance. We'll cover a little bit of all those, but really have something for everybody at this race. And yeah, really looking forward to hearing about the course for all 3 distances.
Yeah, and I think with
Yeah,
that, Lars. No, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say, I was going to say the three races are something that's new. We have added that experience race, Chipper, which you brought up, which is to get more new folks into the sport who, if you think, oh, geez, this is way too hardcore for me, that experience is really meant to just give you a taste of that environment and the experience. And then, of course, the sprint, you're starting to get a little bit perky, and then the World Series is just, it's a beast. It's a thing.
Yeah.
So a little something for everyone.
It sure is. It sure is. So Catalina's coming up in about a couple months from the time that this episode's going to be released. And we did an episode about a month ago with the famous Nicholas Ramirez talking about training for Catalina. In that episode, which we highly recommend people listen to, we were talking about a course that was the 2020 course, which was, our internet sleuths, people who are like, hey, something's different on the map from when we checked it a couple weeks ago, like tipped us off. And then Lars, who were nice enough to confirm the changes. So there've been some changes to the course since the 2020 edition. So before we get into breaking down, a leg by leg of the experience sprint and World Series, can you just tell us sort of like what was the rationale with changing the course? I mean, from my math, it looks like it's about 5K shorter from the at least the World Series distance is 5K shorter from 2020.
Yeah, great question, Chris. And, I think it all comes down to flow, right? Swim, run, flow. We talk about this a lot. You guys talk about this a lot. You want to move through a course in a way that makes sense. It doesn't feel forced and contrived. And if we can just jump back to 2020, you guys remember what it was like you trained all winter long, you're super fit. 100 meters into the race, we were all hiking.
Hiking, yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was a bit of a crazy, it was kind of like, what? WTF moment. I remember saying that to John, literally hiking behind the reigning world champion, Frederick Axelgaard, and Oscar Olsen, who's on the Mount Rushmore of, goats in this sport. And we're literally arms on our quads, hiking up the mountain in one strung out line. So, I think that was part of the initial genesis was, let's let people kind of express their fitness a little bit more out of the gates. I think not to jump forward to the sprint race, but you will see that climb is still in the course for them. But there's no shortage of elevation on this course, no matter where you go. No. So I think it would be a mistake to look at the distances and say this course might be a little bit short. It is going to whack you really, really good repeatedly. So I wouldn't worry and get hung up too much about the course distances. And just broadly speaking, and we can jump into this a little bit more. The other thing I remember competing in this race was how cold those long exposed swims were. And, I think there were a couple swims that were damn near an hour, to complete.
Yeah, they were pretty back to back. There was only a mile and a half between the 2 super long swims. And yeah, certainly people got hypothermic in 2020. There was some issues for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's more difficult than you would think on that island to find coves that do work with the swim distances, but we knew that we wanted to shorten some of those swims up. I mean, there's still, everything's right in that 700 to, I think we got a one swim that's over a K. But again, don't let the distances fool you because that water's cold, potentially very choppy.
Yep.
You've got a big blue ocean on one side of you. And so, I think those swims are all going to be challenging. And so, but that was the genesis was let's shorten these swims up. And I think we actually added a couple more swims. We just got rid of those two long back-to-back ones, which, I think there's still a little bit of, some brain cells that still haven't recovered on my end from 2020 with those swims.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we really love about you, Lars, is you are a swim runner. You've done the world championship. You race the races that you're directing as well, and like you have the swim runner's best interest at heart. You know what a really good course looks like, and you really have a good sense of that. So like you have so much trust from the community, and it's like, hey, if Lars makes these changes, he's making them for a good reason there. And then, a few weeks ago, we saw you and someone else from the Ötillö team out there checking the course out, doing some of the runs. So kind of getting a sense of the feel. And we know that's something you like to do. You did it at Whistler, to kind of really experience it. It's one thing to map it out on Google Maps or draw it out. It's another thing to actually do the swim run in person. So, and that really influences how some of the changes are made on the course. So I would assume that your sort of recon session that you had a few weeks ago influenced some of the changes that we see.
Oh yeah, and before I forget, I got to say I also got input from the Godfather himself, Andy Hewitt, who
He knows a thing
conceptualized
or two.
this, and Catalina wouldn't be around had it not been for Andy coming up with this course back in 2019. Probably even before that, if we're being honest, he had already thought of this venue. But after so it was Jr., who's part of our Ötillö staff, and myself were out there about 10 days ago. And off the back of that recon visit, we synced up with Phil and Mara and Andy Hewitt, and floated the course by him. And he said, how about a tweak here and there? But he had some excellent suggestions. And believe it or not, I'm going to put him on the spot. He actually was pretty stoked that we got rid of that opening climb as well. So because of course he's going to be racing this year.
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, your explanation of just trying to improve the swim run flow experience of the race makes a lot of sense. Like, and certainly it's a hard way to start a race, which is like
Yeah.
after 200 yards or something, you're just like straight up, which requires you to make, if you're trying to win that thing, requires you to make some tactical decisions, which now are a little bit more sort of levels the playing field a little bit more. Let's talk about these courses. So let's talk about the experience, which obviously is going to be sort of a new route. When they did the race in 2020, Ötillö split the race in 2 days. So Saturday was like experience and sprint, and then the long course was on Sunday. But those courses are a little bit different than what they are now. So why don't we go through the experience and just give people a flavor of sort of the leg by leg and distances if you have them.
Yeah, so you're right. So in 2020, it was two separate days. A Saturday did the experience and the sprint, and then Sunday was the World Series. April. So the race in 2020 happened on March 1st. February 29th and March 1st were the 2 days. And so a little bit earlier in the year. I don't know about you, but if I was racing, I'd want another 2 months essentially to kind of get ready and maybe have the conditions
Get some
warm
more
up a little
miles
bit
in.
and
Yeah.
get some more miles in the legs. It definitely struck, the fear of God was instilled in everyone having it that early in the year. But as such, the weekends are busier for them out on Catalina. And so, for example, I think the Catalina Conservancy Ball is happening on Saturday this year. And so, just with some different logistics and the fact that all of our Ötillö races now throughout the US and in Europe have all moved to 1 day formats, I think primarily, we want everyone to experience this sport together, whether you're, first timer or, Chris, Chipper, Mark is grizzled veterans. So, everyone kind of needs to, be able to, everyone's listening to these podcasts. So everyone needs to get a chance to brush up and meet one another. So that was the rationale for moving it all into 1 day. And yeah, let's hammer through the course if you want to. Yeah. So I think the big thing with the experience race is, we want everyone to experience, as many swims as are doable while keeping the distances fairly short, and we don't want anything to be too overwhelming. And then, having a couple, I would say nice medium distance runs in between. So, I think this is something that it's going to be about 9 kilometers of running and swimming altogether. So just under 10K for the whole race. And, I think you got one decent sized run in there, and then you have that last swim. I think is going to be what swim runners are going to want to be trained up for that experience race, because that's your kind of nice exposed swim. And I think it's just under half a mile. You're looking at, I think it's 800 yards. So that's
Okay.
in your training, I would say you want to be able to swim about 800 to a kilometer straight and feel pretty good. And then the run, I think your longest run is just about 2 miles. And so I think if you can run a 5K and feel relatively fresh, I think you're in good condition to be able to do that race.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
from the map, it looks like great for spectators too. Like if you got family you want to bring over, it's gonna look great because it's all kind of contained.
Yeah, you're right. That ferry comes into Two Harbors, and for those who don't know, Two Harbors and Avalon are the two towns on Catalina Island. Avalon is like something that's out of Italy, like on the kind of this Mediterranean coastal seaside town. And Two Harbors is really something that's almost like out of Jurassic Park, is the way that it's been described. It's really it's your nature's paradise, and very rustic, very laid back, just giant terrain surrounding you. So that ferry pulls right into the harbor at Two Harbors, and our race hub is literally within 50 meters of getting off that ferry, which is really cool. And
Yeah.
so, if you're a spectator, you're going to have multiple times when you see your athlete, your racer coming through, and the finish line, the start line, it's all right there. It's really easy access. So you can meander around, hopefully see a buffalo, and still be back in time for the finish.
Yeah, from a
Yeah,
safe
absolutely.
distance.
Safe. Keep those buffalo at a safe, bison, whatever. And no cars on Avalon, so golf carts and walking only, and bicycles.
Yeah, no, Two Harbors is a little bit more, they're renegades. So there's a few more vehicles out on Two Harbors. But I don't think you're necessarily going to be, you're not going to be playing frog or dodging cars left and right.
Yeah, there's not a car rental spot on Avalon.
There is no car rental.
Golf cart rental,
If
there
you
is
see a
though.
vehicle out there, it's likely our race staff or someone needing to get some information to our race staff or volunteers.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love the addition of the experience level race. I know you all added that in 2024 with the USA series, but it's just a great approachable distance for folks to come in, somewhere between that 8 to 10, maybe 12 kilometers total. You get a, try on swim run, see how it goes. And if you're out there doing a half marathon, Olympic distance triathlon, half Ironman type stuff, it's definitely, very suitable for you to go out and try that on. And then I probably think you'll finish and you'll be like, oh, I should have done the should have done the sprint is what I would imagine it will feel. And we'll segue into the sprint from that one.
Yeah, let me just say one more thing there about the experience. So one of the locals there at Two Harbors, who's part of the USC's Wrigley Marine Biology Institute, his name's Sean Connor. He's been an amazing resource for us. And he was back in 2020 with Andy as well, and Natalie and the crew. Sean he raced the experience in 2020, and he's going to race it again, and then put up the mic, put up his shoes, and be our announcer for the rest of the race. So, but it definitely left an impression on him. And he said it's been one of the more fun racing experiences that he's had doing that experience race.
Oh, I'm gonna make a shameless plug. So I got this from Hannah, does social media for Ötillö. If you're a spectator, you're gonna be out there, you want to do some volunteering, could always use some more volunteers out there. So if you got a couple hours, you want to volunteer, while your racer is out on the mountains and stuff, do it. Sign up.
Good plug, Chris.
I mean, hey, The not so dirty secret is you think we treat our athletes well, that you ain't seen nothing. We treat our volunteers like kings and queens.
As you should. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, so let's talk about the sprint. A little bit beefy from the maps. It's, the experience very approachable, decent amount of elevation just because that's the terrain, but just with the sprint, it jumps right on up.
Yeah, you've got three sizable climbs on the climbs, and we didn't mention this before, but what goes up must come down. And folks, these descents are not to be forgotten and neglected. They are some steep descents. You're going to want to double and triple check the tread on your shoes before you come to the race. Make sure you got the knobbies because, oh geez, and that's on a dry day. Imagine if it was wet and slick. Those downhills could be really, really, really treacherous. So, but yes, in the sprint course, you got two climbs. Actually, the first two are newer to the course. That first one goes up by the Banning House, which is really the only island company lodging that's non-camping in Two Harbors. And then the second climb is this cool little. It is actually called the Deer Trail, and the Deer Trail was actually a recommendation of Sean Connor, and it is a perfect Swimrun Ötillö style track. Single track,
Nice.
winds up, just twisty, winds up through the trees. Beautiful vantage point of all of Two Harbors there. And then that third climb and then descent that you're going to have is the one the infamous one we were talking about at the beginning, which was the opening climb back in 2020 of the World Series course. And for you sprint folks, that is going to be your last run before your swim to the finish.
Empty the tank on
There's
that
gonna
thing. That is a knee
be some
scraper.
major posturing going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely get your hiking legs on. There was no one even attempting to run. I mean, we're talking there were grades 30-40%. I would imagine I was looking for a gondola, but there was none. So we just had to make our way up.
Oh God. Yeah. That was actually probably the very close secondary reason why we took that out from the World Series race, especially at the beginning of the race, is because that downhill could end your race before it's even started. So at the very bottom, you guys it's probably etched into your memory. There's like a finger-sized piece of like crowbar that sticks out right out of the middle of the ground. Don't worry, we'll put a cone over it. But I came across that the other day on the recon, and I thought, what the heck? This would be like, why would you want to get impaled before your race has even started?
Who's been impaled in a race? I don't recommend it.
Yeah, not right.
Flip the page on that one.
Yeah. Well, the sprint course, I actually really like that course because you are going to sort of new areas of Catalina where I know that the World Series covers a little bit of this ground, but yeah, it's like you really, you still get a major challenge from, according to the maps, is about 1,400 feet of climbing still in a total distance of about 15K, right? So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It'll be a nice challenge, but also not something that you need to, I don't want to say you want to take it seriously, but in the scale, you would definitely want to take the World Series seriously. You want to take this seriously, but maybe not as serious as the World Series, where you can like let off the gas just a little bit. But yeah, perfect for folks who are already fit, already sort of maybe training for triathlon, beginning of their triathlon season. Maybe they've already done a triathlon or something in the year already, and they just want to express their fitness another way. Couldn't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, and we talk about this often, and I hear you guys talk about this as well. Again, pick out the longest single distance that each of these courses, have,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to be able to do that comfortably. So, for example, if you're looking, just about a 3-mile run is the longest run on that sprint course with significant elevation. So, maybe you go out, run a 10K as part of your training, and then get on the Stairmaster for 20-30 minutes to finish it, or hit the Stairmaster first and then go on that 5-10K run. How do you feel? That's a good gauge. Same with the swim.
Yep.
I think you got to be ready to swim 1,000 meters straight and
open
feel
water.
pretty good, because and open water if possible, for sure. That first swim of the day for the short course, that has the potential to be rough. So, you're gonna that's 1,000-yard swim with the potential to have some texture on that water. I think you're not gonna want to pass by on too many training sessions.
Yeah. And you do offer same day ferry from the mainland to Avalon as well, which is a great addition as well. Chris and I stayed a couple days. The island is great to stay on, Catalina, and we stayed in Avalon as well. If you want to practice and kind of get a feel, what's the water temp going to be? What are some of these hills? There's plenty of little mini course swim runs you can do the day before. So if you show up a couple days before to Catalina Island, bring your gear, test it out. You'll get a feel for the water, get some of the open water. There's plenty of hills to go out and find there. So, we definitely recommend getting out there as much as you can before. Doesn't necessarily, you don't have to take a ferry up to Two Harbors to like get on the course. There's plenty to do in Avalon that will get you, a good understanding of what you're in for the
Yeah,
race.
and Lars, maybe you have some intel on this as well. I'm assuming that Envol is probably going to do like a shakeout clinic the day before, potentially I'm assuming Avalon. So stay tuned for
Yeah,
information about that because that'll be a great way to like check gear, talk to super experienced swim runners,
Yep.
you know, get the
yeah,
wiggles
you're
out.
spot on, and that'll likely be Marcus and Trista, would be my guess. I think it is TBD whether or not Nico's going to come and defend his title, or not. Is it 5 years is a pretty good grace time to decide if you want a title defense or not.
It's a good point.
Um, and yeah, so but that'll be Tristan and Amy, and they do a remarkable job of just more getting you comfortable with the process of swim run, putting your mind in a framework where you're thinking about being efficient, working on your footing. They're not going to be able to build your fitness, but they're going to make your race day experience, I think, a lot more fluid and help you flow
Yep.
through the course quite a bit better. So
Yeah,
again,
some ins
that's
and
not the time to be building your fitness, but that's the time to maybe just be figuring out the kind of the equipment package.
Yeah, Hayes in the barn there, and a little bit of sharpening. Get some of those transitions. We found with our first few swim runs that as the race goes on, you're like, oh, it's coming to you a little bit more, and if you can kind of knock that learning curve out a day or two ahead of time, you'll be set up for a better day on race day.
Definitely.
Yeah, and Chris, you had mentioned the ferry from the mainland on race morning. We know that there's just a big population of swim runners in San Diego, Orange County, LA, and a lot of them got to get back for work, or that might be their quick haul pass to get away for the day. So we
Yeah.
wanted to have that as an option to be able to do morning of, get back that evening. So I think that's proven to be a pretty popular option for a lot of people.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's great.
smart move adding that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we always talk about this show since the beginning is like try to make it accessible. And if, you don't have to find an Airbnb on Avalon for 3 days because there's a 3-day minimum or something. It's like, hey, we're just trying to reduce as many barriers. You can rent a wetsuit, you can do all these things. It's all about just trying to get people out there. Let's talk about the World Series distance. So this is the one that's gone through the most change as
Lars
mentioned
is warming
before.
up
Oh, here
already.
we go. Yeah, get limber, get limber. The course has been changed. It's shorter, but not necessarily easier. It's to kind of improve the running or sort of the racing experience. So why don't for this one, because this is the one where probably going to cause people the most anxiety. Let's really try to go like leg by leg and talk about sort of you know how the course is laid out, any tips for different sections, and if you have any sort of training notions that for people to keep in mind while they're sort of visualizing how they're preparing for this.
Yeah. So, the visualization most likely is already starting now in your training. My guess is that as you guys are hitting those swim sessions, you're visualizing being on Catalina and, where your energy might be at any given point in a workout. Again, I bring myself back to 5 years ago, and I just remember training with like a major kind of fear hanging over the head. Like, this is the first race of the year and it's stinking hard to be fit and ready for your first race of the year, cracking out of the gates, that is no small feat. So, in having said that, I trained for Catalina in Texas, where there's not a damn hill within probably 8 hours of where I live. So the Stairmaster became a very good friend / worst enemy. But then also, you just try to get in as good a fitness as you can. And, also Chris and Chipper, I don't have a lake nearby. And so swimming pool, I just tried to be as consistent as possible. And I heard your podcast with Nico, which I would recommend everyone go back and listen to. And I think he recommended get in that water at least 3 times a week. And believe me, even though the swimming, I think total is about 5K total, you will never, ever, ever regret being swim fit. You will never regret it in Swimrun.
I mean, that's a pro tip worth mentioning over and over. I think we've said it, I don't know how many times on the show, Chipper. It's like, you want to have a great swimrun experience. Best way to do that is not have it turn into an ordeal. And typically where things turn into an ordeal is by not having enough swim fitness. If you can look at any swim on the course and be like, I got this, that completely changes your day for the better.
Yes.
Even, for us, our big scary thing was the world champs. And, the 2 years we did that, there wasn't one swim when we were like, I don't know if I can do this, or like, this, there was no fear. It was just like, you were ready. And that just kind of unlocks, again, when we're talking about swim and flow, being in a great headspace, all this stuff, supreme swim fitness is going to help you the most.
Yeah, that's really, really well said. And, it takes away those other fears that could compound on top of that. If you don't have that swim fitness, now you're starting to think about the temperature. Oh, is it 60 degrees or is this 55 degrees? You start to think, oh, is that a hole in my wetsuit? All of these little things start to compound. If you're fit and you have a robust fitness, it takes care of a lot of things. And to be honest, this is a great course for not having speed and having strength. If you're a strong athlete and maybe you're missing a few matches on the speed end, that's okay. Catalina, in my opinion, is not about being a fast athlete. It's about being a strong athlete.
Yeah, good. Yeah. That's a great call. Yeah, no sprint finishes on the beach. We're anticipating.
But if there is, we'll be there at the finish to watch, and we pity you. That's a tough way to finish a race.
Yeah. So let's get into this. So let us. Why don't you just do like a leg by leg kind of what we're looking at with the new course?
Yeah, and guys, feel free to jump in because I'm also going to be honest. I know I'm not training for the race right now, so I know that you guys are also probably thinking about each of these specific distances. My mind instantly just goes to that 10K across the island. So, but you're going to get quite a bit of running in before that. So, start with 2.5 miles. That's going to be some elevation, both some elevation gain and then descent. The hope there is that we do get separation into that first swim. It can be really challenging if we get like at the World Championships where everyone descends onto the beach all at once for that first swim. If you have a little bit of separation, I think that makes it a bit more enjoyable experience for everyone as the athletes. And so about just a little over 2 miles of the first run. And then that first swim again is about 1 kilometer. And that's going to be from the Two Harbors campground over to the USC Marine Biology aquatic facility. So you're going to be getting out on a ramp there. That ramp, do you guys remember? Quite slippery.
I do, yes.
Quite slippery.
Yeah, and that's a sprint swim, like you mentioned as well. It does go out and around there for a K, like you mentioned. So, hitting it hard out of the gate with a solid 2-mile run. It looks 300-400 meters of elevation gain, and then coming back down that side of the mountain and right into that swim. So, you're going to be right to it when the first couple legs here.
And I'm going to admit as well, like you want to kind of we want you guys dripping with a bit of sweat and nice and warmed up by the time you hit that water. Then that water it's not even going to feel that cold. You'll have worked up a sweat. You're going to hit that water and you're going to go. as the Godfather says, dog in, dog out. Now, Chris and Chipper, you guys know this because you've done Catalina, but we should say this because it's cove to cove with a lot of these swims. You are not going to be able to see the exit point for this swim, this first swim, and for quite a few of the swims. So we'll have signs that with an arrow that point you in the direction that you need to swim, and just follow the shoreline. And unlike some of our other races, you're probably not going to be able to crawl out of the shoreline because these are very tall cliffs that are surrounding this island. But just keep following that shoreline, and you will see one of our 10-foot teardrop flags that'll be the swim exit. With this first swim, like we said, it's very slippery on that boat exit ramp. I would even encourage people, don't think that you need to win the championships of getting up on your feet as soon as possible. Just pretend you're on a big Swedish rock that's really slippery and just crawl your way up.
Yep.
Get out of that first swim unscathed, and then you're gonna go to this new deer trail that I mentioned. And this deer trail, this run it's a little under 2 miles, but right away, even if you're cold, just keep moving because you're going to start going uphill right away. You're going to warm up pretty quickly, I think. It basically is a bunch of switchbacks. I think you can, the top athletes in might be able to run it like a kind of a steady pace, but it's not going to be fast running. But it might not be a bad spot if you want to save a few matches to do the old, hands on the quads power hike up this spot either. Once you get to the top of that, then you're going to be going on a downhill back into Two Harbors. At that point, I would say when you get closer to Two Harbors, there will be a few signs that are going to be directing athletes in different ways. We do have a couple merger points where Sprint and Experience might be going one way. You in the World Series might be going a different way. So you do need to keep your head on a swivel, make sure that you're identifying the signage that is for the World Series. And you're going to be taking the flat, it's the only flat road on the entire island. You take this flat isthmus road past a tiny little yacht club in what's called the Catalina Harbor. And that's going to be the start of the second swim. So it's, what do we got? Just over a little over a mile run. Oh, sorry. Altogether, that's a 2-mile run. And then that'll lead to about a 600-yard swim. And then that 600-yard swim, pretty standard. That's probably the most docile swim, I would say, of the entire course. That's going to lead to the big boy.
Oh, yes.
That's your Trans Catalina across the middle spine of the island, and you're going to get your money's worth on this run right here.
Yeah, so
That's
it's a 10K. It's a 10K run. It's super steep going up, super steep coming down. Really beautiful at the top. There's going to be a little mini aid station there, as there was in 2020 for people to fuel up. This is probably a good point to Lars. So we were talking about before. Yeah, you can be super fit. This is a race to be strong. So it'd be really important to make sure you've saved a handful of matches just for this run. This is the meat and potatoes of the course. It's a super long thing. Make sure you're mentally ready for it. Make sure you have a plan. So for us, if I can speak for Chipper, we're going to have full flasks, water flasks. Oh. We're just going to
hammer the hills. Okay, yeah.
Just blow up epically, and then just be really smart about making sure we're staying on top of our fueling, staying on top of our hydration, and then refilling and refueling at that aid station. Like, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Like, you want to stop there and make sure you're okay, because once you get to the top of that hill, I mean, you're probably not even halfway there yet. You're probably close to, maybe close to halfway, but certainly you have sweeping descents and then really, really steep descents, which it's great if you're doing hill rips. This is something that John Stevens taught us a while back. It's like sometimes the hill rips should just be, flying down the hill and doing steady or walking up, because you're going to want to, you're going to lose your quads is basically what I'm telling you if you're not at least somewhat prepared for that. I mean, Chipper and I certainly, our quads were liquefied by the end of the race, in a lovely way. It's all good. It's all fun, right?
But a type 2 way. Type 2 fun type of way.
As baseball guys, here's how you train for that. give your kiddo the baseball bat and just let him take swings right at your quads, okay? Because after that, that's what that downhill is going to feel like.
For sure. Yeah, but
Great
that
point.
run's awesome. I mean, such a great view. I mean, this is one of the
Breathtaking.
this is certainly one of the places where, you get to that aid station, take a minute or take a beat and just kind of do a 360 spin, because it's like the places Swimrun takes you. I mean, certainly we can talk about Orcas Island. It takes you some pretty crazy places, crossing the Portland Sound and Casco, Catalina. This is really like, oh my goodness. Such a beautiful thing to be able to behold, and to think you got there swim running. It's just amazing.
Yeah, if you guys remember, there are a few points, but for sure that aid station where you're talking about, you look to the left and you see you see the water on one side of you. You look to the right, you see the other side of the water. It is. I mean, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say it's a top 5 view on any swim run course in the world. I'm sure Rockman probably has a couple as well, but this is right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. So you finish this run, and then
Chris, just you did bring up nutrition, and you're spot on. Don't ever skip a nutrition station. And it's going to be precision hydration again. For those of you who have done our races here in the US before, precision hydration has been our go-to since the beginning. The Low Tide Boys is their go-to. Even if you look in the photos, there's this strapping guy swigging a precision hydration bottle at the 2020 race on Catalina. That's their CEO, Andy Blow. This guy is a swim runner. The products that he puts on our courses made for swim runners. So I would highly, highly recommend using the Low Tide Boys code that they have. We don't have one, but use their code and start training with that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And another pro tip, or just to reiterate again, like we bring a 700 ml soft flask, have that empty for the race, fill that up before. You're going to want that thing busting at the seams with hydration and fuel, and make sure your gels are ready to go up that climb. Because when you're powering up that climb, take gels, stay on top of your nutrition, and obviously take in fluids. Try to take as much as you can in, because when you get to the top, you can replenish for the breathtaking descents on the down hills.
Just put something in real quick. We just got the code a few days ago. Low Tide 2025. Save 15% off your first order at Precision
Beautiful.
Fuel and Hydration. Tell them the Low Tide Boys. I don't know the Low Tide Boys sent you, but yeah, well taken. I mean, we can never. I mean, it's been such a game changer for us since we started the show on nutrition and just being really smart about that. I guarantee you, whoever's going to take the most gels is going to have the best chance of finishing this thing, especially if they're cold. Especially if you get cold, like you basically, I actually heard this on another podcast, but it's for Swimrun. This has to be like mandatory education. The colder you are, the more energy you're burning. So you're going to have to increase your carb intake to compensate for your body having to do all the thermogenesis to keep you from getting getting hypothermic. So you got to fuel your body for that process to be able to continue. So the more fueled up you are, the more carbs you can take in the form of gels, which is the easiest way to do this in swim run. I mean, maybe you can take a jelly, PB&J sandwich, but I can't vouch for it not getting soggy or something. That's going to serve you really, really well. So do your gut training, bring extra gels. If you start getting cold, double your gels. Like, do whatever you need to do, because that's what your body's going to need. Now, interestingly, a place where we would have to essentially channel Oscar Olsen, famous Oscar Olsen, with his famous line, "Take the fucking gel," would be when you finish this long run, you go to the Parsons landing swim. And this is like, I mean, this race has only happened. It's only happened once, but the iconic swim. Can we say that about this? Like, this is the most unique, interesting swim that you're gonna find in basically any swim run. Next to maybe the pig swim has these interesting kind of features to it. It's super exposed. I don't remember how long it was, but it almost doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
You need to be prepared for this.
I don't believe Strava what it says.
It's so much fun. Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, Strava's lying.
Yeah, it's super fun swim. You got to swim out through waves.
Yeah, I mean, how do we? Well, no, you keep going because you're hitting exactly the kind of the picture. You got to create a picture in their head of what this is, and you're
Yeah.
spot on. I heard waves and I heard washing machine. You're on the right track.
Yeah,
Yeah, or like
it
Passover
literally
tea
is.
kettle.
Yeah, I mean, make sure that when you head in, this is one place that, yes, we swim, run, flow, and being fluid, but take a beat, assess the situation, have a plan with your partner. Hey, Chris, I'm gonna head us in. The waves are coming in large and in
Yeah,
charge. So
time your
just make sure
entry.
you're, yeah,
Yeah, time your entry. There's an aid station right before that. Take some fuel, get yourself lined up. If it's really if there's a lot of waves, you certainly don't want to go in at an angle. You want to sort of go direct, kind of perpendicular to the waves as they're coming towards you, so you can just go kind of straight through them. You're probably going to want to burn a match. Just get over the break. If assuming there's when we did it 5 years ago, there was, I don't know, was that 3-4 foot waves or something like that? It might be, who knows what it's going to be, but you essentially swim out. And this is probably the closest thing to like a triathlon swim. You kind of swim out to a buoy, you bang a right. There's another buoy, you bang a right, and then you come in, and that's super fun.
yeah,
So that one you're kind of doing a little bit of body surfing just to get in. So not the longest swim, very interesting, very challenging, requires a lot of focus, a lot of attention, and this is someplace. This is certainly the swim where it teamwork. Teamwork is your friend. Be really
yeah,
smart about who's leading, who's doing what. And yeah, it's an awesome swim. When Chipper and I did it, I led the first swim to the buoy, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna burn it to this, and then you kind of take us out and then bring us home. And that worked really well. I grew up swimming in waves like that, so I felt like we had like a little bit of advantage, which we're now sharing with everyone listening. But yeah, super fun, super fun. But like on paper, Lars, how long is that swim? 600 yards, 700 yards, something like
I
I
that.
don't
think
even
you hit
think
it on the
that,
head.
like
It,
450 or something.
no, no, and Chipper, I thought the same thing, and then I went out there on the recon. I was like, this swim is way longer than I thought. But I think it's because of all the lore and the backstory though that goes behind it. You swim around some rocks that are not moving. There's some rocks that are large and that you can see. They look like pillars. So you'll swim around that, like you said, go around one buoy, go to the next buoy, and then come in. And it's that in that I remember. There's some
Yeah,
pretty big rocks on the body surf in. And so, without being too dramatic here, like you can end your race if you're not careful on that body surf in. So, be very aware of the line that you take coming in, because there are some big rocks potentially, with depending on what the tide might be.
Right, right. Yeah, and if there's a volunteer telling you information or a course marshal from Ottawa, listen to them. Just listen to them.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't have to
yeah,
second guess what they're
Uh,
saying. They're looking out for you.
so
You don't have to be like, "Oh, is this," just listen. It's okay.
One of the greatest stories that I've ever heard of a swim run course happened at this specific location too. This is where Brent Molesbury, one of our Orcus race directors, was doing his first ever swim run, and him and his teammate Chris Pearson, whose wife Kelsey was in the hunt for a podium with Caroline Wolick, and Kelsey's goggles had broken leading into this swim, and this is one of the few points on the course where you crisscross other racers as they're coming out,
yeah.
you're going in. And Chris and Brent went by Kelsey and Caroline, and Kelsey said, "My goggles are broken." And her husband, Chris, without even thinking, gives Kelsey his goggles. So they're good to go. Boom, off, running. Brent, who had been pulled by Chris the entire race so far, thought to himself, "Oh shit, my swimmer just gave his wife his goggles." So he, without thinking, gave Chris his goggles, which meant that Brent couldn't see any longer. And so, fortunately for him, in the next swim, so he did that entire Parsons Landing swim blind. Fortunately for him, he did
Wow.
get a pair of goggles from the Howland camp at the next station. But if that doesn't scream swim run, teamwork,
Oh,
and generosity, what
that
does?
that is one of my favorite Sorman stories of all time. But Lars, maybe I don't know if you know the next chapter of this, because essentially, whenever you have your goggles break, you start carrying an extra pair of goggles. So Carolyn Wolick at, I want to say, Casco. 2019, she had an extra pair of goggles and she was on the course and someone had broken their goggles. So she gave her extra set of goggles to this random person. So it was just kind of like paying it forward. So it's such a lovely, yeah, I love that story. I love that story. The
Yeah.
selflessness, it was all, it's so great.
And raise your hand if you still carry an extra pair of goggles with you for that reason.
Yeah, I feel
Depending
like
on the
that's something
course,
you start
not a
doing.
bad
That's
idea.
something you start doing. That's only
Yeah.
something you start doing once you've
Yeah.
actually had that happen to you. So you finish Parsons Landing. There's a little bit of a run. If I remember correctly, it's like a mile, something like that. And then you get into, one of the longer swims of the day. And this was a swim, I think it's over a kelp forest. It's amazing. It's just super, just tons of like fish and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, this swim, I don't remember exactly how long it was. But Lars, I don't know if this is one of the swims that you've shortened because there was like a series of long, like kind of extra long swims in the 2020 course. So I think this is a place where the course is very different from where it was before.
Yeah. So this one, so you're spot on. This was the back-to-back long swims. And by long swims, we're talking they were each over a mile long. One of those alone felt like a long swim. The two combined made for a significantly long portion of that day. This is really cool area because for those of you who have heard of the Catalina crossing where you start swimming, these marathon swimmers who start at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. on Catalina and swim into Palos Verdes on the mainland, we're taking you to the beach where they start their swim. So it's called Doctor's Cove. And this was not part of the 2020 course, but it's a bit of an homage to Andy Hewitt, the Godfather, who has done that Catalina crossing before. But we're going to
Of course
actually
he
put you
has.
in at Doctor's Cove. Of course he has. I
Of
believe it or
course.
not, he's even done it naked.
I believe that.
That's
That
that's a
surprises me
swim
not at
that's
all.
a marathon
I'm less
that's
surprised
a
about that.
marathon
Yeah.
swimmer thing. So that swim starts at Doctor's Cove. It goes around a blind, like a kind of a blind cove, and then it opens itself up to a really nice, beautiful beach. You'll be able to pick out the swim exit flag right away. And similar to a lot of our run exits and runs, it'll start going right upstairs. So almost as quickly as you get out of that probably chilly swim. The water temperature is currently about 60 degrees. So that's what you should be playing with is 60-ish. You'll start going right uphill, start warming up a little bit. Then I would say, what do we got? It looks like maybe a kilometer run, and it's going to be windy, a little bit of elevation. You'll be able to, get your land legs back onto you, back with you again. You go down to, do you guys remember the Lion's Head, the iconic Lion's Head rock, which is a pretty iconic rock that, yes, it does look somewhat like a statue of a lion. We exited there in 2020 and went up a little goat path. It's actually called Goat Whiskers Trail. This time we're going to go down Goat Whiskers Trail. And so from Goat Whiskers Trail, then you're going to swim around that cove and out. I think that next cove is called Cherry Cove. So you're going to get out at Cherry Cove, and then Cherry Cove is going to. Did I skip a swim here?
I don't think so.
No, I think you're good. Yeah, Lion's Head, and then some
No, that is right.
switchbacky around the Camp Cherry Valley, and that brings
And
you
do you
to the
guys
final
remember that
swim of
from
the day.
2020? And if you remember that canyon, that's a canyon where it just winds you around this real, it takes you through, yeah, a canyon. It takes you through kind of this valley between rocks. You can see where you need to go, but you have to actually probably run about a mile to get there. It's a pretty
Yeah.
sizable run. And then you get into your last swim, which is called 4th of July Cove. And different from last year or in 2020, we kind of took you back out to the USC Marine Biology Institute, swam you in that way. This year, we're putting you in at 4th of July. You're going to swim into the beach, and then you're going to finish.
Yeah.
Nice, 300-meter beach saunter to the finish line where you know, I remember Lars and Andy Blow and John Stevens already
In a
beer in
cabana.
hand. Go Low Tide Boys from a cabana as Chris and I trotted in 7 hours plus, and Lars fully probably had 2 burgers in him already and a couple beers. Uh,
And that was the beginning of that was the first day of the rest of your life, right, guys?
Seriously.
yeah.
No, seriously. I mean, I remember finishing that thing and just being like just extremely motivated to become a better swimmer. Or
Yes.
just get fitter. Or just get fitter. I mean, I think, having again, mentioned at the beginning, I can't think about this race. And I know I'm speaking for Chipper without just having a lot of nostalgia for, that was our first time really sort of being embraced by the swimming community as like, quasi public figures. It was such an amazing day. The race was super hard, as we've been saying, but still extremely memorable. And in fact, when they'd opened registration for 2021, I Kipper and I were probably the first people to sign up.
I
Like,
think we were
like no,
top
like
three
no
to sign
BS.
up
I think
for.
it was
Yeah.
like the second it opened, like it's like we're just, we're putting our flag in that we're coming back. And obviously, stuff happened, and now 5 years later, it's finally coming back, and I am so stoked. And if you haven't signed up yet, and you're listening to this, and you're finally gonna, shit or get off the pot, use the code LTBZ10 to save 10% off registration for this race and any Ötillö USA event. Lars, I mean, any final words? Anything else we need to tell people to get them to sign up for this thing?
It's almost 80% sold out.
Um,
I just saw this morning.
Oh yeah,
So time is running out. Space is limited, people. Go,
yeah,
go,
yeah,
go.
and the reason for that is ferry space. So, we this as you've been able to tell if you've been, looking at this race, it takes some logistical planning as well. Half of it is training for the race, half of it is planning logistically for it. So, yeah, we're limited by ferry space, and so once those spots are gone, they're gone. And so I wouldn't wait. We definitely have, I would say, more availability if you're planning to come from the mainland on race morning. We have less availability, as in it is very limited availability at this point, less than 10, I would say, to get from Avalon to Two Harbors on race morning. So do not wait if that's part of your plan. And the only other thing I can mention, because when we on our recon trip, we went from Catalina, then we made our way down the coast, eventually getting down to San Diego, where we spent a couple of days swimming and running with different clubs and groups who are interested. And a lot of people asked where they could find equipment for this race. They're new to Swimrun or what have you. So ARC was kind enough to leave all of their equipment with us after the Austin race. And brand new ARC equipment can be had for, I think it's 20% off across the board. That's wetsuits, that's kangaroo tops, that's pretty much everything that they have. And that's available now. So you can get the finest equipment that's available in Swimrun to
Yep.
be ready for Catalina.
And
Yeah.
where do people go for this? We'll
Link
make
in
sure
the
we
show
have that in the
notes.
show notes.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah, certainly, that's one way to get gear. If you happen to be a small, tall, or medium tall men's, we might have some suits for you from our vast, array, and as part of our Low Tide Boys gear loaner program. Even some pull buoys, if people need them, just let us know, hit us up. But yeah, this race is going to be amazing. Lars, really appreciate you taking the time. And as I mentioned
Yes.
before, you've been one of the champions of this sport. So I'm so stoked for you that this race is coming back, because I know what it means for you and what it means for all of us is really having to be the first Ötillö race to come to our hemisphere and have it be such a success, and to finally have it come back. I think, vibes are high.
Absolutely. And Chris, I'm glad you said that. This was a big deal for the brand Ötillö because although we had our Odyssey races, this was Ötillö's first race in the US back in 2020. So you're spot on. It really means a lot to the whole staff as well.
Awesome.
Awesome. So we won't, this is the last time we're going to say it. Go register, people. We got 3 different distances, 10K, 16K, and then the World Series distance. A little bit of something for everybody, but guaranteed to have a hell of an adventure out there, and a great time on quite some amazing, beautiful country off the coast in Southern California. So we'll be out there. Can't wait to see you in person, Lars. And then, we'll see all the racers out there. But again, as Chris mentioned, thanks so much for coming on the show, walking us through all 3 courses, sharing some stories from 5 years ago, and obviously some pro tips. Really appreciate that, and all the support over the years as well.
Same back at you. And the days leading out when I'm setting up the course, I'll be doing the buffalo dance. So hopefully you can see a buffalo this year.
Sounds good.
Sounds from a safe distance.
Thank you, guys.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating or review, since that's the best way to help other people discover the show and the sport of swim run.
Check out our website, lowtideboys.com. That's boys with a Z, for swimrun resources, including gear guides, tips, how-to videos, and so much more. Make sure to check out our meme page at The Low Tide Boys on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, send us a DM or email us at lowtideboys@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Riding Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swim run and other activities.
Lots of activities.
Lots of activities.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
Then a run.
And then a swim.
Then another run.
Then another swim.
Then run some more.
Just keep going.
Let's go.
And then stop at some point because,
And fuel. Don't forget to fuel.
Gotta fuel
of course, yes.